This is my album review for Confrontation by Soilent Green. Confrontation by Soilent Green is my absolute favorite album by them. It was released in 2005, and to me, I think it's the most unique album of theirs. None of their other albums start off the same way, and none get so dark in the same way as this one has. And above all, none of their other albums have resonated in my heart like Confrontation has. Soilent Green's music is very different from the other bands in the New Orleans area. This, in my opinion, in my ears, is because of Brian Patton, their guitarist. To me, the first thing you hear with Soilent Green is, or are, the guitars. Brian Patton is at the foreground of their sound as a whole, like the face of the band in a way. When I listen to Soilent Green, I think of Brian's riffs, and they just slam, they hit me in the face. I love the tone of his guitar for this album, for one. It's heavier than their previous two releases. While being their heaviest, or to me, what I consider their heaviest, his tone still retains that, what I consider trademark razor blade sharpness that I associate with him. To me, Brian leads the music instrumentally. It seems that Tommy Buckley, their drummer, follows after Brian in the preceding direction that Brian ever takes them. Scott, their bassist, mostly follows along in rhythm, but he still shows his talent on each song, too. I personally believe that you have to be talented in order to follow whatever chaos that Brian Patton is doing. I think, in general, Soilent Green's music can be categorized as chaotic, and I'm sure it has already. In fact, as I'll talk about later in this video, but I did find some news articles from when this album had came out. I found some news articles from when this album came out, and I was right. Let's just say that. For some, though, the chaos within Soilent Green might be overly so. I've tried to get a friend into them earlier this year, 2024, and they did not get it. It was too chaotic for them, but for me, I'm inclined to quote Tom G. Warrior, "Let chaos reign." I welcome the chaos that comes with Soilent Green's music. It's not a mystery to me. I personally get it. It's an organized chaos to me, something that, when you analyze it, has its own actually clear elements. Despite coming off as a cacophony at first, or to a first-time listener, Soilent Green as a whole has deep, multifaceted elements to it. Part of the reason why it seems so chaotic is because it's like a picture, where upon closer inspection you could see all these finer details and all of the smaller pictures that make up the mural. Confrontation is a dark album. It is very dark. It has a heaviness that is not only there instrumentally, but lyrically. When I think of this album, I feel a lot of darkness. I feel a lot of blackness. It comes off to me as an album that was written in a way that it had to have been very cathartic. I imagine it probably was, considering the things that the band went through before this album was made. The album came out in July of 2005, having been recorded in January of that same year, 2005. At the time of recording, their previous bassist, Scott Williams, had been murdered barely a year prior. And before that, the band had 2 accidents, the second of which almost killed Ben Folgu. At the time that they made this album, the members of Soilent Green had many reasons to use this album as a creative release. It feels like Brian carried over some of his heavier sludge tones from I Hate God Some of the heavy tones on Confrontation remind me of I Hate God's album, Confederacy of Ruined Lives. The tone in that album is very similar to me. When I listen to Brian Patton play in I Hate God and Soilent Green, I close my eyes and I see all of these sound waves. I think of pink and yellow, kind of, I don't know, like zigzag shapes or something. Sometimes when the song is really dark, I see red too. When I listen to this album, I can hear how Ben and Brian play off of each other. There's like this little push and pull between the two, where a riff Brian is playing and whatever words that Ben is saying. You could tell that Ben, I think, either wrote or he decided to sing in a way to go along with Brian, and then you could tell that Brian made riffs that went along with Ben's lyrics. To me, it's this like tug of war, very playfulness that you might do with a cat. You know, you play with your cat and you have some yarn and the cat's trying to fight, you know, whatever. That's what I think of when you play with your pet cat. But for the most part, Ben is a separate entity completely on his own. A separate entity vocally where the band is musically. As the writer and vocalist of the band, Ben Fogu is somehow able to verbalize the instrumental chaos that makes up Soilent Green. Ben, as a vocalist, is unique. I mean, as a person, he's unique too, but we're talking about the music here. Ben writes these long sutras worth of lyrics that would take me about half an hour to read. Yet he's able to get his point across in songs that are as short as 2 minutes and 24 seconds. I have no idea what causes him to be this way. I've never met anyone in my life that writes like he does. I've never read such elaborate lyrics from a singer. Never. Confrontation, like all Soilent albums, seems to be written from a more personal perspective, at least lyrically when you compare it to Goat Whore. The lyrics seem to exhibit a story or multiple stories as the songs unfold. Whether they were intentionally written to connect with one another, I'm unsure. They don't appear to be drastically different or separate topics, or drastically different stories. Perhaps this is just how I view the lyrics. I won't lie in saying that I do feel a personal connection to this album. My own feelings may be interpreting the music drastically different from how it was originally written or the original intention. But of course, that's also the good thing about music, where we can find different meanings within it and still connect with each other. To me, I interpret the lyrics as coming out of a place of darkness. The lyrics tell a story about a person that's been hurting. Someone who feels so dark and alone inside that has for a long time. They've been hurting for a long, long time. It's like I can see that someone is afraid to put themselves out there and that they're afraid to trust again. The concept of lost innocence or innocence in general is brought up multiple times within Soilent Green's lyrics. The album A Deleted Symphony for the Beaten Down, which came out in 2001, mentions it the most, at least when I did a just quick look on dark lyrics. On that album, it's mentioned about 7 times, and on Confrontation, Innocence, it's mentioned about 4 times, though the lyrics are missing to the final song on that album, on dark lyrics. Personally, I read and think of the lyrics as a story. It's like the story that goes along with the song, the instrumental parts of it. I see it as someone who's been incredibly hurt and who has been incredibly betrayed. In some ways, it seems like, to me, I interpret the lyrics as this person as having been betrayed by their own family. It seems like they've been hurt by their family for quite a while. This left that person feeling depressed, suicidal, and questioning their sense of self. This person knew that growing up and living their life, that what their family did or was doing was wrong. Whatever their family did, they knew deep down inside it was wrong. Yet, any time they would try to say anything about it or rise up against whatever they were doing, they'd be attacked or shunned. You either had to live the lie and be a part of the family or part of the group, It doesn't have to be family, it could be a group, But you had to live the lie and be a part of the family or spend all your time alone. And begrudgingly, to me, it seems like this person went along with the lie because they really didn't have a choice. The story develops where the person often contemplates killing themselves, but ultimately can't do it. This also fuels their depression, as written in the lyrics, and this person feels like a coward because they couldn't do it. Personally, I don't consider anyone who does that a coward. Yet the underlying theme of Confrontation, of course, is about how, despite all these things that should have killed that person, this should have killed me, Despite all these things that should have killed this person, they are still here today. Despite the failed relationships, every single shard of glass that cuts, they live through the pain. I'm still here is what I think of when I listen to this music and I read these lyrics. And yeah, I am getting kind of emotional. It's like the narrator is still surprised in some way that they're still alive. I feel a connection to the lyrics in this album. I feel like I've gone through some similar things too. I, too, have felt the dark, acidic thoughts of depression. I've been so surprised some days too. I've been surprised that I'm still alive. I can't help but speak along with Ben when he says the lyrics, I bleed, I bleed, I bleed. In the song, a scream trapped underwater. I've felt that way too. I bleed. I bleed. I felt like screaming. I have felt like screaming. And yet I've realized in the past, no matter how hard I scream, and no matter how hard I cry for help, help is not going to come. I've gone through my own hard times in life. And in some ways, many ways, the lyrics to this album mirrors that. I've been at odds with a parent, hurt by them, lied to. I've been told that I was a burden on my family and the reason why we don't have money. Things that were said to me which will stick forever. Perhaps I like this album so much because I see so much of myself reflected into it. Like a mirror image, a twin soul, or a twin flame. I've gone through similar pains in my life as the ones that were written about here. Though I don't think, I know that the pain that's written about in this album is not the same thing I've gone through, but I can commiserate. I've read the lyrics and I've shed tears. I'm not gonna lie. I've teared up reading these lyrics. You know, I feel for the person that is written about in them. I feel for the person that wrote them. I have compassion for the person, whoever they are, that is talked about in these songs. Because at one point in time, honestly, many times, I've been that person too. I can't help but feel so connected to whoever it is that Benjamin had written about, real or not. You know, he's told me in the past that he's, you know, written songs about people that he knew or other people in the band that they knew, you know. This is my lotion, my Vaseline Cucumber Green. Anyway, you know, I can't help but feel so connected to whoever these lyrics are about, whoever has been hurting, because I too have had my own pain, and so I feel connected with that. That's how I think a lot of people in general connect with each other, because of similar experiences and even similar pains, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all looking for somebody to say, hey, I felt that way too. You're not alone. You know, and it's very vindicating in some ways. Real or not, whoever the person is. And I'm not trying to find out who it is either. I don't care. I don't care. My point is that no matter if this was a real person he wrote about or not, it moved me. It really did, you know. And Benjamin has such a gift. He has such a gift. Oh man, I'm getting emotional. Benjamin has such a gift. And I feel so moved when I read his writing. I feel so incredibly moved. Oh gosh, I'm trying not to tear up. Oh man. You know, I've read so many lyrics to the songs he's written for Soilent and Goat Whore, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it really is. You know, if you just really read it, think of it not as lyrics to a song or, you know, death metal or tech death and stuff like that. You know, some of these songs that he's written are just beautiful pieces of poetry. That, for me, maybe I'm just a sensitive schlub. But, you know, he has a gift. He has a gift in writing. You know. And, I mean, thinking about it now, you know, it's not surprising either that you could be moved, that I would personally be so moved by everything that he wrote. It's not surprising because if you ever talk to him in person, he just has this... I'm getting emotional. Wow. This is supposed to be an album review. But anyway, if you ever talk to him in person, he just has this way of making you feel, you know, that he's listening to you. And not just hearing what you have to say. Not hearing. He's listening. Listening to everything that you actually say. And he remembers everything. you know. And in fact, when my life was coming down and I was going through my own hardships, Benjamin was the first person to listen to me. He really was. Oh my God. God damn it. I tried to talk to so many people in my life. I tried to talk to my family, and nobody was listening. Nobody was listening to me. They didn't really hear what I had to say. And Ben was the first person that I could sit down and talk to. He was the first person who really listened to me. And all I wanted was somebody to talk to. And he listened to me. God damn it. Yeah. He's my best friend. All I wanted was somebody to listen to me, and he did. And I got a best friend out of it. Okay. I need to get back to this stupid review. Anyway. But that's another reason why I love this album. Why I love Confrontation. In my mind, the narrator has been beaten down for so long that they're sick of it. Yet when they try to have a confrontation with that person that has been picking on them, the confrontation they need to have. Whoops, I need to stop because my camera's fucking up. But when they try to have a confrontation with the person that hurt them, it's a lot more disappointing than they thought. The person that hurt them can't take accountability for their actions, and they try to somehow spin it as the narrator's problem. Yet, as disappointing as this confrontation was, to me, I interpret the lyrics as the narrator feeling still a sense of accomplishment from having even done it in the first place. And I understand that too. Despite what it might seem like, I'm very shy. And I have a very, very hard time of standing up for myself. And so, at least that's how I view confrontation, because for me, if someone's ever done me wrong, someone's been rude to me, it's very hard for me to stand up for myself. It was. That's one of the biggest lessons in my life. Learning how to stand up for myself. I've tried to confront the ones that have hurt me in my life. And every time, actually, truly, when I was writing this, I thought about it. Every time, none of those people took accountability. I've learned in life that accountability is not something learned verbally, but rather physically through action. No matter what I say, what anybody says, no matter what I say or do, the older I get, the more I personally just walk away from the people that hurt me. Because truly, the only lesson that a person can learn is through the absence of presence. I personally think that sometimes your absence is the lesson that will be the catalyst for accountability. And so, thinking about it, My eye makeup all fucked up. Mm. Wow. I can't even make a video without my makeup getting fucked up. Mm. Anyway. But I guess that is just the power of Benjamin's writing. I'm over here deeply analyzing the writings, the lyrics to this album, you know. But for me it's not just music. It's a way of life. It's an experience for me. It's my culture. And when I listen to an album, any album, I listen to it. I've listened to Confrontation in so many ways, so many different ways, at various times of day. I've been sober, I've been high, on pot. I've been in bed, I've been in my computer chair. I've listened to this album multiple times driving my car, whether to a goat horse show or just to get groceries. I've listened to this album a lot sewing too. Personally, I think that Confrontation is best enjoyed at night, around 11 p.m. or so, when it's completely dark. I like to personally cut on my LED light or lamp, whatever, and just hang out in my room with the red light on while either maybe smoking a little bit or drawing. In general, I think of the colors red and black with this album. To me, Confrontation is red and black. Granted, that's kind of the album art anyway, but musically, that's what I think of too. Symbolic in some ways of all the bloodshed to make it, and the darkness that it subtly highlights. Of course, the color scheme of the album, as said before, is basically black and red. But, is it black and red because that's just what they chose for the album? Or is the album art that way because that's how they interpreted the music too? I don't know. I like the majority of the album. I mean, I like the whole thing. I have multiple favorite songs. To me, this is an album that flows. It flows. Or I can't get that in the shot. Flows. Which might sound ironic in some ways, but I can listen to this album back to back. I can start it, finish it, then start it back over again. Leaves of Three is an amazing opening track that not only jams, but has the capacity to fuck shit up. A Scream Trapped Underwater is a perfect progression after that. I really enjoy the almost aqueous type of flow that comes from song to song. It doesn't feel chopped up and put back together. And it's almost like a live set in a way, if you've ever seen any band live. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. The lamp fell over. But as I was saying, each song flows after each other. It flows really well, very naturally. And in many ways, it reminds me of seeing a live set, a band live, because a lot of, typically, I don't think I've ever seen a metal band play a set list that, didn't make sense. Seeing bands live, they'll choose songs that are great for, a live show, so they flow with each other. I'm not sure how this album was recorded exactly. At least at the time that I wrote this review, I didn't know. I did end up finding some articles later on that confirm Confrontation was done at least partially analog. That's what they're calling it now. Analog. Confrontation was recorded before the Renaissance, quotation marks, Renaissance of digital music recording. And this is a positive. This album was obviously in some ways recorded analog, and it sounds better because of it. And I know that this is going to get some shit. I don't care. But what I'm surprised about is that this album was recorded at Mana Studios with Eric Rutan. It was the first album, I believe, that they recorded with Eric Rutan. And this is actually really quite surprising because the the album doesn't have what I like to call Rutan's curse. This must have been before all of that set in. And the only explanation I'm going to say about this curse is that if your favorite band has ever recorded an album with Eric Rutan, you probably just already know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm surprised with how Confrontation has the ambient, of course, analog type of noise to it. It's actually like listening to a record playing. For me, it really has that, analog kind of record play, the hum of when you drop the needle. It's very good in that aspect. I like that it's like that. And actually thinking about it too, in Scott's bass solo, the track Paper Cut, it almost sounds like there's some sort of highway noise in the background. And actually, personally, I like that. I guess, once again, it feels weird saying analog, but I love these quote unquote analog type sound, the background noise. I don't care if there's a hum or a hiss or whatever. To me, that's part of the reason why we're listening to music, because we're trying to fill up empty rooms. It makes an empty room feel more filled. My only real gripe with the album actually is the final track. So I know this sounds kind of weird because I said, oh, the album flows. And it does. And if you're already a fan of Confrontation, you probably already know why I kind of have a gripe with this song. But they did the secret track thing where, it was on other albums of that era. You saw it on Equilibrium by Crowbar, Pagan Terrorist Tactics from Acid Bath, and some more. And I know that this was a thing for that time period, that late 90s, very, early 2000s. Let's have a secret track because, of course, back then, CDs were a major format. And so the whole secret track thing is like, oh, the song is over after like 4.5 minutes, but, 10, 15 minutes later, there's still more to it. But as someone who still buys CDs and I still listen to CDs, I hate the secret track thing. I am not a fan of that shit. I just want to listen to the music. That's my point. Let's see, I wrote it down over here saying that the final track is about 4 minutes, 14 seconds. I think it's more like 4.5, almost 5 minutes. But it's about like 4.5 minutes of actual music and then silence. And then at a couple of random intervals, there's some riffs or two, 9:42-ish, and then silence. And then again at 20 minutes, 28 seconds, and again at 21:21. The interval at 20 minutes and 28 seconds always catches me off guard and scares me. In fact, one time I had fallen asleep. I was laying in bed listening to the album, and of course the secret track plays, so when it was silent I had started to nod off, and I woke up to one of the random riffs, and I got confused because I was like, why am I listening to music about a farm? Because I don't know what the farm riffs were for. But now that I think about it, I don't know if Confrontation came out before or after Soilent Green did, oh God, what's that stupid ass show? the theme, multiple themes, whatever. They did some stuff for Squidbillies, that show, that was on Adult Swim. So, that's supposed to be all country, so I don't know. But anyway. And speaking of, I also imagine the track Another Cheap Brand of Luck as a montage from Charlotte's Web when Wilbur breaks free from the farm for the first time. I don't know. I just think of Wilbur running free. One of my favorite tracks, though, on the album is They Lie to Hide the Truth. It just has this amazing tone. Oh man, that is a good one. That is a good song. It's amazing, and strangely enough, I don't know how else to call it, but it's like a gaseous riff. It's gaseous. It's not, it's nuclear. I don't know. It's toxic. This toxic, gaseous riff that Brian came up with. And that sounds like an apocalyptic, radioactive bomb went off. In fact, it's like a nuclear crucifixion. I just think of the album art, Retaliation from Carnivore, when I listen to that song, when I listen to that riff. That is just how good, like how much I love that riff alone. Or tone. But yeah. And, the other songs I like on Confrontation are Leaves of Three, 12-Ounce Prophet, Scream Trapped Underwater, pretty much the rest of the album. Scott's bass playing is like the squid ink that boldens Brian's playing. It's like Brian Patton is the bowl of noodles, and Scott is the squid ink that makes the flavor. I don't know, that was a bad metaphor. Anyway, but Brian plays in a way that makes sense to my anxiety disordered brain. His razor sharp riffs are just like slicing through any doubts. It reminds me of how my mind works, where I feel like I have to keep adding more complex stuff despite everything being complicated enough already. Every riff slices through my anxious doubts and worries. His music is like a flow of waves vibrating into my heart to help me relax again. I enjoy the drumline parts from Tommy. I'm not a drum expert, but this theme seems to recur within his playing for this album. I'm not sure if it was intentional or influenced by anything. I think back now, in fact, there was a lot of movies from that time period that were kind of like drumline-ish. But anyway, I liked the solo tracks, the tracks that pretty much were to show off the talents of each musician. And it was really sweet in a way, because it was kind of like, they were like, look what I could do, And this might be strange to say, but there's parts of Tommy Buckley's drumming that are actually jazzy. It's kind of like jazz. It reminds me of something from Charles Mingus's band. And no, I'm not making that up. I can't even think of it off the top of my head, but one time I was listening, I was like, man, does he have jazz influences? For real, But, it's really not surprising. The band is from New Orleans, and that's the jazz central, whatever. Who is this type of album for? I think that you already have to be a multi-genre person to like this type of music. Soilent Green's music isn't the type... Soilent Green is not the type of band to fit under one label. They have elements of technical death metal, punk, progressive, hardcore, jazz, and even funk. A little bit of everything. I don't think Soilent Green is the easiest band to get into. I really mean that. I'm just being legit. I'm being honest. They are not the easiest band to get into. If you like I Hate God, this should be an easy fit. Brian's about. Brian was in there too. I'll just say is, whatever. You might like Soylent Green if you also enjoy Gore Guts, Devin Townsend, Strapping Young Lad, Carnivore, early 80s Voivod, and even Superjoint Ritual to a point. I think that really just goes to show how much of a blend this band is. To have thrash, hardcore, and progressive elements all in one. It's it's genius to some and confusion to many. Confrontation is a must-have album for me. If I had to choose only one of Soylent Green's albums, it would be this one. If I was like, I can only bring this one physically with me, whatever, or I don't know. If I can only choose one, it would be this one. This is my favorite album by them. For me, this is Soylent Green. Despite, So Mouse Secrets being like their titular album, the pinnacle of Soylent. To me, in my personal opinion, when it comes to lyrically and instrumentally, Confrontation is the best example of each musician's talents, including Benjamin. Benjamin's writing, Tommy's playing, Brian, Scott. Confrontation is an incredible example of what all these people could do when they put their minds together. It showcases the band's talents, how cathartic the process and creation of this album was for them, and overall, it just jams. It jams. It's a fun album to listen to. It grooves. It jams. It's a good album to drive to. Good to listen to for reading about Buddhism. Maybe that was ironic, I don't know, considering the album art. But to me, it's so unique and different from the other albums. It's one of a kind. It's one of a kind. And that is why I like it. All right, so this is so post review. I found some articles from 2005, and I think in a couple, I think from 2006, from when Soilent was about to from the Confrontation era. Right before and after the album came out, their touring season. So there's just a couple of snippets I wanted to read that I thought were pretty interesting. So there's one clipping I have from the Atlanta Constitution, dated February 9th, 2006, that says, "A feast of mayhem. Oh, scary metal." So talking about how during this time period, Soilent was was on tour with Nile. I just thought that this was really funny because it says, New Orleans' Soilent Green puts a sludgy bit of southern sultriness in its metal. No one will mistake this stuff for Hillary Duff. It's just like, okay, yeah, all right. One thing I've consistently found, I need to stop doing that. I've consistently found when clipping articles with Soilent Green is that so many people have used the wrong version of Soilent. And not talking about the band. When people talk about the band, they get the name right. But when they talk about the movie, they use the band's name, the band version of Soilent. So I think that's really funny how the movie, I would say, is arguably more popular and famous, and yet in newspaper articles, people are using the band version of the name. Kansas City Star, dated June 13th, 2006, where the article, as I've seen others before in the past, have said, Soilent Green is music. So they use the band's version of the name. And of course say, Soilent Green is a 1973 sci-fi movie. But Soilent Green is a metal band. So, after making a couple of boomer jokes, this really interesting part says, anyhow, the chaotic metal grind outfit from New Orleans does seem relatively focused when it comes to naming its albums, including Forgive and Regret, Stone Mouse Secrets, and A Deleted Symphony for the Beaten Down. I just thought that was funny because the author wrote Forgive and Regret as an album name, which that's actually one of the song names from Confrontation. Actually, that's not an album. Sorry, Sweaty. Stupid. But one thing I find so interesting in all of these articles from around the country is that any band like Goat Whore, Soilent Green, anything that's from Louisiana, these authors to these articles will write, expect the depths of Louisiana swamp sludge. They always gotta say that. Louisiana swamp. The swamp. On the swamp. But going through these articles, even just these small little clippings, I found it seems that nobody really seems to know how to describe Soilent Green's sound. A little clip from November of 2005 just describes Soilent Green as Sabbath's jazzy sludge, Pantera's testosterone rage, and Slayer's blistering destruction, stitched up into a full frontal southern metal assault. Pantera is from the South too. And then I found this really, this never before seen article and picture of Soilent Green. Maybe it's somewhere, online, hiding around on an old website. But from August 31st, 2005, there was an article from the Courier Journal, and it just said Fairdale Rocks. And, I mean, it was kind of just your standard, Soilent Green's coming to town, It says, we dare you to tell someone in Soilent Green that they misspelled Soilent. You might get a guitar to the temple. The thrashy New Orleans metal group is coming to town, and it's bringing a cast of fellow hard rockers with them for a mosh fest at the Bulldog Cafe in Fairdale on Friday. And then it lists a bunch of bands that I don't think even exist anymore. But this picture of Soilent Green, I had never seen before. I was like, oh my God. I was like, damn. This picture, look at Benjamin. He doesn't have any tattoos. He has, no tattoos. That is so nuts. Oh, the things we find through time. Another interesting clip from July 28th, 2005, also shows that nobody really knows how to describe Soilent Green's sound, where this person says, like any good mad scientist, Soilent Green has created a monster. One that's stitched together from the finest elements of extreme metal. It's a feral beast that pounds you into submission with the leaden heaviness of sludge, then rips you to shreds with the blinding ferocity of grind and misanthropic fury of black metal, along with any other sonic weapon he can get his hands on. What the fuck are you talking about? What? And that's something too. Maybe it's like a Gen X thing, but a lot of these articles just kept saying sonic sound. What does sonic mean? What does that mean? It's a bunch of nothingness. It makes no sense. But I do like the idea of, I think of Brian Patton as a mad scientist. That sounds about right for him musically, I would say. Really? It says that on Confrontation, the band works this whacked out non-formula for maximum impact, delivering the same concise yet devastating blasts of metal that have made them one of the underground's best bands. That's just like a bunch of alliteration, isn't it? From the Arizona Republic, describes Soilent Green's sound as one of the hardcore underground scene's more accomplished bands. The Louisiana-based group's sound is a blender full of metal, southern rock, and aggressive rock that has helped put its home state on the map with fans of music that pummels the senses. I like that, a blender full of metal. That sounds about right, you know. On July 16th, 2005, The Morning Call made I don't know what you would call it, semi-review about Confrontation, along with talking about Nile, because they're going to do a tour together. But the clip says that vocalist Ben Fogu is undeterred in his misanthropy and belches it over a southern fried southern fried musical maelstrom that includes everything from death metal blast beats to stuck in the Louisiana mud, stoner rock rhythms, and country and western hoedowns. But Confrontation is more for the novice than the long-time listener. And that part I disagree with. I think that Confrontation is not for a new fan. If you are trying to get into Soilent Green, I really don't think Confrontation would be the most accurate example to get into. Not that you can't get into it or listen to it, but it's just that this album has so many elements of it that a first-time listener would not, it would just go over their head, you know? If you want to understand or know how Soilent Green is as a band, then yeah, go listen to So Mouse Secrets. And this final article, I actually kind of came across by accident. I didn't anticipate coming across, what's actually kind of legitimately an article while doing this. So dated August 5th of 2005, coming from the Albuquerque Journal, is an article that states accident, death in band, led to Confrontation. And of course it talks about a little bit of the history with Soilent. And it kind of, I guess they must have interviewed Ben Fogu a little bit because there's some quotes in here. And actually this article ended up confirming some of the things that I had thought about or speculated in my review, because I wrote my review before finding these articles. But to quote some of it, this article says, "Heck, experiencing what the band went through en route to the recording of Confrontation would be enough to beat anybody into submission." Of course, it mentions the vehicle accidents that Soilent got into in 2001, 2002. It states here, a late 2002 van accident near Chicago follows that left Ben Fogu with broken legs and ankles and an extensive period of rehabilitation. The apex of agony, though, came in April of 2004 when Scott Williams was shot to death. It says that he was shot to death in a Louisiana restaurant, but I think that is just an error. Probably because at this point in time, 2005, it wasn't that much after he had passed. Why call the new record Confrontation? Look at the things we have confronted in the last 4 years, Ben is quoted as having said. It's one word, but it represents everything we've been through. Of course, Ben was confined to a wheelchair after the major accident in Chicago. And it says that Benjamin not only battled physical demons, but emotional monsters as well. The hardest part was being wheelchair bound and not being able to work on music. He's quoted as having said, "The anxiety was overwhelming. because you've got all these bands that are your contemporaries passing you up. You say to yourself, I want to get some music out and get things going. It was like a big wall that I couldn't climb over. And so that confirms to me at least some of the, I guess you would say, pain. Some of the darkness and pain deep down inside that helped made Confrontation into what it is, into what it was. That Confrontation would become, or is, an amalgamation of hardcore, speed metal, and down-tuned sludge that would make Doom Minister's Black Sabbath proud. And while today's metal bands are looking for over-processed, distorted sounds, Soilent Green employed a decidedly lo-fi approach, and using vintage Ampeg guitar amps and recording to 2-inch reel-to-reel tape before transferring it all into the currently popular Pro Tools format. Finally, the article ends with another quote from Benjamin, where he said, Pro Tools is a great thing, but the only thing it hasn't captured yet is the full, rich sound that you get off of 2-inch tape. I'm sure the average listener might not be able to tell the difference, but the people that have been into us and understand the tones we use will be able to tell the difference. And like I said before, this article pretty much confirmed some of the things that I'd speculated and thought about when writing my review of how, hey, this sounds very, analog, very, just, I guess, let's just say old school, because nowadays in 2024, you can hear the difference when something is more. You could tell when a band has recorded some music that is just purely, completely, utterly digital. That's my review of the album. I hope that if you watched this, that you maybe learned a thing or two if you're into Soilent Green or the sludge scene in general. That Louisiana sludge, bitch. So anyway, and hopefully I could do this a little bit more. I don't care how old an album is. If I like the music, I think I'm going to just do an album review. I really don't care. It'd be nice to get some more videos out anyway. So if you enjoyed this or you enjoy any of my other videos, feel free to subscribe to this channel, because it seems that a lot of people watch this channel, but they don't subscribe for whatever reason. Either way. Thank you for watching. Ow, my tongue hurts. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you soon.